Everyone tells you the hybrid Maverick costs more upfront and you need years of driving to earn that money back. That advice is backward and it's costing Maverick shoppers real money right now. I've spent years running the numbers on these trucks for customers walking into the dealership, confused about which engine actually makes financial sense. Today I'm showing you the real break-even math, the number Ford's own brochure never puts in front of you, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which engine saves you money based on how you actually drive. Let's get into it. Start with the assumption almost every Maverick shopper walks in with. They assume the hybrid is the expensive upgrade and the gas engine is the cheap, no-frills option. That assumption used to be true. For the first few years, Ford sold this truck, the hybrid powertrain was the option you paid extra for, and the turbocharged gas engine came standard. Ford flipped that structure. On the current Maverick, the 2.5-liter full hybrid is the standard engine on the XL, XLT, and Lariat trims. The turbocharged 2.0-liter EcoBoost gas engine, the more powerful one with 250 horsepower, is now the paid upgrade. It costs roughly $1,000 more to move from the hybrid to the gas engine on a front-wheel drive truck. If you want all-wheel drive along with that gas engine, you are looking at a larger jump, since AWD itself carries its own charge on top. So the very first piece of hidden math is this. Walking onto the lot assuming you'll pay a premium for fuel efficiency, then discovering the fuel-efficient engine is actually the cheaper one to buy, changes every calculation that follows. You're not spending extra money up front to save on gas later. In most trims, you're saving money up front and saving money on gas. The break-even question isn't whether the hybrid is worth the extra cost anymore, because in the majority of configurations, there is no extra cost. The real question becomes whether the more expensive gas engine is ever worth paying for, and that depends entirely on what you actually need the truck to do. Let's talk about the fuel economy numbers themselves, because this is where the sticker gets misleading if you don't know how to read it. The hybrid Maverick is rated at 42 miles per gallon in the city, 35 on the highway, and 38 combined. The gas turbo engine, in its most efficient front-wheel drive configuration, comes in around 23 city, 30 highway, and 26 combined. Add all-wheel drive to the gas engine and those numbers drop further into the low 20s combined. Here's the detail Ford doesn't spell out for you on the window sticker. That 42 city figure for the hybrid isn't a rounding trick. It reflects how a hybrid powertrain actually behaves in stop-and-go conditions. The electric motor handles a huge share of the work at low speed, the gas engine shuts off at stoplights, and regenerative braking recovers energy every time you slow down. The gas turbo engine doesn't get any of those advantages. It's most efficient at steady highway speeds and least efficient exactly where most Americans do most of their driving, in city traffic and stop-and-go commutes, on short trips to the store. So the gap between these two engines isn't a flat 16 miles per gallon difference across the board. It's a gap that widens dramatically for city drivers and narrows for highway commuters. This is the first variable in your personal break-even calculation, and it matters more than almost anything else in this video. If 90% of your driving is highway miles at consistent speed, the hybrid's advantage shrinks to single digits in miles per gallon. If most of your driving is around town, errands, school pickup, short commutes with lots of stops, the hybrid's advantage nearly doubles. Now let's actually run the numbers, because vague talk about better mileage doesn't tell you anything concrete. Say you drive 15,000 miles a year, which is close to the national average. At 26 combined miles per gallon, the gas engine burns through roughly 577 gallons of fuel annually. At 38 combined, the hybrid burns through about 395 gallons. That's a gap of around 182 gallons a year. At $4 a gallon, a reasonable national average depending on where you live, that's roughly $728 a year in fuel costs saved by the hybrid. Now remember, in this scenario, you didn't even pay extra for the hybrid. You paid less upfront, and you're saving over $700 a year in gas. There is no break-even period to calculate here because there's no additional cost to break even against. The hybrid wins from day one and keeps winning every year you own the truck. This is the calculation Ford could put on a simple one-page insert at the dealership, and they don't because dealers make more margin pushing you toward the gas engine upgrade and the all-wheel drive package that often comes bundled with it. The scenario changes the moment you start adding options that only exist on the gas engine or that cost significantly more when combined with the hybrid. This is where the real break-even math comes into play, because now you are spending real money up front for that turbo engine, and you need to know how many miles it takes to earn that money back in fuel savings. Except this time, the math runs in the opposite direction because you're paying more for the option that burns more fuel. If you spend that extra $1,000 to upgrade from the hybrid to the gas turbo, you're not just failing to save money on fuel, you're losing money twice. You paid more for the truck, and you'll spend more at the pump for as long as you own it. Some buyers still choose this route because they genuinely need what the turbo engine offers. So let's talk honestly about when that trade actually makes sense, because it's not never. Towing and hauling capability is the single biggest legitimate reason to pay extra for the gas engine. The turbocharged four-cylinder produces 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, noticeably more than the hybrid's output. With the proper towing package, the gas-powered Maverick can handle a heavier trailer than the hybrid is rated for. If you're regularly pulling a boat, a decent-sized camper, or a loaded utility trailer, the hybrid's smaller electric motor and lower torque ceiling become a real limitation, not a theoretical one. In that case, you're not really comparing fuel economy anymore. You're paying for capability the hybrid simply doesn't offer at the same level. And no amount of gas savings changes whether the truck can safely pull the load you need it to pull. If towing is a regular part of your life, don't let fuel economy math talk you out of the engine that can actually do the job. Acceleration and passing power is the second legitimate reason, though it's a much softer case financially. The gas turbo Maverick gets to 60 miles per hour in the mid 6-second range in independent testing. The hybrid needs closer to 8.5 seconds for the same sprint. That's a real noticeable difference if you're merging onto fast-moving highways regularly, passing on 2-lane roads, or just prefer a truck that feels responsive under your foot. But be honest with yourself about how often that difference actually matters in daily driving versus how it feels sitting in the showroom, stepping on the throttle during a test drive. Plenty of owners who chose the turbo purely for the driving feel later admit they rarely use that extra power, and they're the ones quietly paying more at the pump every single week for acceleration they use twice a year. Here's a piece of the equation almost nobody talks about, and it's arguably more important than the miles per gallon sticker: maintenance and long-term ownership costs. The hybrid system uses a continuously variable transmission paired with the electric motor, and hybrid brake systems rely heavily on regenerative braking, which means the actual friction brake pads and rotors wear down slower over time because the electric motor is doing a lot of the deceleration work instead of the mechanical brakes. Owners of hybrid trucks and hybrid SUVs across the industry consistently report longer intervals between brake jobs compared to gas-only vehicles driven the same way. The turbocharged gas engine, on the other hand, comes with its own long-term maintenance considerations. Turbocharged engines run hotter, operate under more boost pressure, and have historically shown more carbon buildup on intake valves over time with direct injection, along with turbocharger components that eventually wear and can require expensive repairs well outside the powertrain warranty period. None of this means the gas engine is unreliable. Ford's turbo four-cylinder in this application has a solid track record. But when you're doing an honest break-even calculation, you have to include the fact that the cheaper to buy, cheaper to fuel hybrid is also very likely the cheaper to maintain option over a 5 to 8 year ownership window, particularly if most of your driving happens in stop-and-go conditions that are harder on a turbocharged gas engine than they are on a hybrid system designed specifically for that kind of driving. Resale value is another factor that rarely makes it into these conversations, but it absolutely affects your real cost of ownership. As fuel prices remain a major purchasing factor for compact truck buyers, and as the hybrid becomes the expected standard rather than the unusual option, used truck buyers increasingly search for the hybrid specifically. That demand tends to support stronger resale values for hybrid trucks in a segment where buyers are shopping specifically for fuel efficiency and low running costs. The gas-turbo Maverick still holds solid value, especially among buyers who want the extra power or need the towing capability, but it's competing in a used market where efficiency is often the first filter buyers apply. If you're planning to trade in or sell within 3 to 5 years, rather than keeping the truck until it's worn out, this resale gap can meaningfully change your true cost per mile, even if it never shows up on a fuel economy sticker. There's another wrinkle here that catches shoppers off guard if they've been researching this truck for a while, especially anyone who looked at Maverick reviews from the last couple of years and then walks into the dealership expecting the old pricing structure. Ford has changed how these two engines are packaged more than once since this truck launched. In earlier model years, the hybrid was genuinely the option you paid a premium for, and plenty of articles, forum posts, and even older YouTube videos still reflect that outdated structure. If you're cross-shopping a used Maverick from those earlier years against a new one, you cannot apply the current math backward. A used hybrid from an earlier model year may have carried a real price premium when it was new, which affects what a fair used price looks like today, while a new Maverick off the current lot flips that entirely. This is exactly the kind of detail that trips up buyers doing their own research, because half the information floating around online is accurate for one model year and completely wrong for another. Always confirm the current year's pricing structure directly on the Build and Price tool before you assume anything based on what you read even 12 months ago, because this truck's pricing has moved fast enough that outdated information is genuinely everywhere. Independent real-world testing adds one more layer worth understanding before you trust the window sticker completely. Automotive testing organizations that run these trucks through actual mixed driving loops, not just the EPA's laboratory cycle, have found the hybrid Maverick's real-world fuel economy tends to track fairly close to its official rating, while the gas turbo model can run slightly below its combined sticker number, depending on driving style and how often the turbo is asked to spool up under load. This isn't a scandal or a case of Ford gaming the test. It's simply how these two powertrain types behave once you're outside a controlled lab environment. Hybrids tend to deliver on their advertised numbers with less variance because the electric motor and regenerative braking work the same way regardless of driver behavior, while a turbocharged engine's real-world economy depends heavily on how aggressively you use the throttle. A driver who consistently mashes the gas to enjoy that extra horsepower will see worse real-world numbers than the EPA sticker suggests, which widens the fuel cost gap between the two trucks even further than the official ratings already show, while a gentle-footed hybrid driver in stop-and-go traffic might actually beat their sticker number slightly. Insurance costs and battery longevity round out the picture, and both tend to work in the hybrid's favor over time, though the gap here is smaller than the fuel and maintenance differences. Hybrid vehicles generally don't carry a meaningful insurance premium anymore now that hybrid powertrains have become mainstream rather than a niche expensive-to-repair technology, so don't let outdated assumptions about hybrid insurance costs factor heavily into your decision. As for the hybrid battery pack itself, Ford backs it with a warranty that extends well beyond the standard powertrain coverage, and the type of hybrid system used in this truck is a well-proven design shared across other Ford and Lincoln products with a long track record of battery durability. The fear of an expensive battery replacement looming somewhere down the road is a legitimate question to ask about any hybrid, but it shouldn't be treated as a reason to default to the gas engine when the warranty coverage on the battery is specifically designed to protect you through the years when battery degradation would otherwise be a real financial risk. Let's talk about the all-wheel drive question, because this is where a lot of buyers accidentally stack costs without realizing what they're doing. Adding all-wheel drive to either engine costs extra, and it also costs you fuel economy no matter which powertrain you choose. All-wheel drive on the hybrid still delivers excellent mileage compared to the gas engine, but it's noticeably lower than the front-wheel drive hybrid numbers. All-wheel drive on the gas engine drags those already lower numbers down even further, into territory where the truck is burning significantly more fuel than a comparable front-wheel drive hybrid, while also costing more to buy. If you live somewhere with real winters, heavy snow, or you regularly drive on unpaved or loose surfaces, all-wheel drive is a legitimate need and worth paying for, regardless of which engine you choose. But if you're adding all the wheel drive purely out of general preference, in a climate that rarely demands it, you're stacking cost on cost while giving up fuel economy on both sides of the equation, and that compounds the gap between the cheapest, most efficient configuration and the most expensive, least efficient one. So how do you actually calculate your personal break-even point instead of relying on a generic number from a YouTube video or a dealership brochure? Start with your actual annual mileage, which you can pull straight from your last 2 or 3 oil change receipts or inspection records rather than guessing. Then estimate your realistic city-to-highway driving split. Most commuters drastically underestimate how much of their driving is genuinely stop and go versus steady highway cruising. So be honest rather than aspirational here. Apply the appropriate combined mileage figure for each engine based on that split, not just the flat combined number on the sticker, since a highway-heavy driver will see numbers closer to the 35 highway hybrid figure and the 30 highway gas figure, narrowing the gap, while a city-heavy driver will see numbers closer to the 42 city hybrid figure against the 23 city gas figure, widening it dramatically. Multiply the fuel savings by your local gas price, then compare that annual figure against any price difference between the two configurations you're actually cross-shopping, including trim level, drivetrain, and options packages, not just the base engine cost. For the vast majority of buyers who aren't regularly towing heavy trailers and aren't chasing quicker acceleration for its own sake, that calculation lands on the hybrid every single time, and it lands there without requiring any break-even period at all, because the hybrid is frequently the same price or cheaper to purchase in the first place. If you found this breakdown useful, go ahead and hit that like button now, because we are about to cover the one scenario that flips this entire calculation upside down, and it is a scenario dealerships almost never bring up during the sales pitch. That scenario is financing cost stacked on top of fuel savings. Here's what most buyers miss. That extra $1,000 to $2,000 you spend upgrading to the gas turbo engine does not just sit there as a one-time cost. If you are financing the truck over 5 or 6 years, which most buyers do, that extra purchase price gets financed too, with interest attached. A $2,000 difference financed at a typical auto loan rate over 60 months adds real interest cost on top of the original $2,000, money you are paying regardless of how many miles you drive or how much gas costs that year. Meanwhile, the fuel savings from the hybrids start immediately and continue every single month you own the truck, completely independent of your loan terms. This means the true financial gap between these two engines is actually larger than the sticker price difference suggests, because you are comparing a one-time upfront cost that gets amplified by interest against ongoing monthly savings that compound in your favor every time you fill up. Run this through any basic auto loan calculator with your local financing rate, and you will see the real total cost of ownership gap between these two trucks is meaningfully wider than most buyers realize standing on the dealership floor, looking only at the difference between two sticker prices. The bottom line is straightforward once you strip away the marketing angle and the outdated assumption most shoppers still carry into the dealership. The hybrid Maverick isn't the premium eco-conscious choice you pay extra for anymore. In most trims and configurations, it's the standard engine, it's the cheaper engine to buy, and it's dramatically cheaper to fuel, especially if any meaningful portion of your driving happens in stop-and-go city conditions. The gas turbo engine earns its extra cost only when you have a genuine, recurring need for its towing capacity or its quicker acceleration, not as a default choice made out of habit or because it sounds more powerful on paper. Before you sign anything at the dealership, pull your actual annual mileage, be honest about your city versus highway split, and run the simple math I just walked you through. In the vast majority of cases, you'll find the truck that costs less to buy is also the truck that costs less to own, and that's a break-even calculation you don't even have to wait for because you're ahead of it from the day you drive off the lot. If this saved you from overpaying at the dealership, subscribe and drop a comment telling me which configuration you're cross-shopping, and I'll help you run the specific numbers for your situation. Share this with anyone you know shopping for a Maverick right now, because this is exactly the conversation the sales floor won't start for you. I'll see you in the next one.